Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Bill Lockman. I'm a Vice President with Mosley Architects. Today, as a 50-year leader of educational facility design services across the Mid-Atlantic, we are excited to exhibit that leadership by introducing you to an outstanding group of teacher leaders who are transforming the approaches school districts utilize in effective and responsive facility design processes. The planning for today's webinar actually began almost 5 years ago. In February of 2016, the first academy to Envision Tomorrow's Schools was initiated in Virginia. As you will see, it included all of the regional teachers of the year from across the Commonwealth of Virginia for 2015 and 2016. Similarly, in 2019, the first North Carolina Academy to Envision Tomorrow's Schools was inaugurated, and it included the regional teachers of the year from North Carolina for the years 2017 and 2018. Both academies had the same purpose: to elicit the voice of the teachers, who we refer to as Academy Fellows, and to gather their thoughts on effective school facility design. Today's webinar briefly describes those academies and will place heavy emphasis on the teachers' voices as you learn through them about how they envision tomorrow's schools. It is my pleasure to introduce today's speakers. Natalie DeFusco-Funk is a third grade teacher at West Salem Elementary School in Salem, Virginia. And she was the 2016 Teacher of the Year representing Region 6 in Virginia. She worked previously in Botetourt County and Newton, Massachusetts, and presently serves as a consulting teacher and blog contributor to national education entities. Freebird McKinney is the 2018 North Carolina Teacher of the Year representing Walter N. Williams High School in Alamance Burlington Schools and the Piedmont Triad region. Currently, he serves as the Director of Legislative and Government Affairs for the North Carolina State Board of Education. Lisa Godwin is the 2017 North Carolina Teacher of the Year representing Onslow County and the Southeast region. She has taught for 23 years and has also served as an instructional assistant, bus driver, and a school leader. Currently, she's fulfilling her passion as a kindergarten teacher at Dixon Elementary School. Ashley Dennis is a Vice President with Mosley Architects. She is passionate about the advancement of education through innovative designs. With nearly 20 years of experience, she draws a deep sense of pride for bringing joy to students and teachers through projects of all sizes, from renovations and additions to entirely new schools. She leads much of Mosley's design efforts in the Carolinas. Stephen Halsey is also Vice President with Mosley Architects. He understands that good design can empower teachers to implement new instructional methods and inspire breakthroughs in learning. He leverages nearly 30 years of experience to serve as a knowledgeable, responsive, and accessible resource for his clients. Stephen is a recognized educational facility planner, and he leads much of our design efforts in Virginia. So, with that all taken care of, it is my pleasure to moderate this panel of distinguished leaders. I will be prompting them along the way, asking questions as we go. So here we go. Ashley, what is the Academy to Envision Tomorrow's Schools, and what will we learn today?
Thanks, Bill. So what we're going to learn today is really 4 learning objectives. The first being how the research, the combined best practices, and the power of the teachers' voices, the fellows in this case, reveal the design concepts not ordinarily incorporated in maybe traditional school facilities that we see. Secondly, we're going to have an opportunity to consider the design process and how it influences our teachers and educators. Third, learning about a novel approach to addressing school facility design. And then finally, gaining a glimpse of the design process and its applicability to our individual schools and districts.
Stephen, can you tell us why the Academy was considered to be needed in the marketplace? Share some of the history of the Academy concept.
Absolutely, Bill. Thanks very much. And as you mentioned in your introduction, the genesis for this really started almost 5 years ago. And at that time in the marketplace, we were hearing terms like 21st century school and 21st century skills. And they were really being talked about everywhere in schools and the conferences we were attending, in discussions with teachers and specialists, administrators, and facility folks, those that we were engaging with in our work. Some questions we started to ask was what was happening in the classroom in the schools 15 years into the 21st century. So we wanted to do some investigating since we were well into this new century, understand what was happening in the instructional environment. We wanted to understand what were the skills that are needed to be taught in today's schools, and how those skills were being taught and implemented. And as you can see on this slide, we were starting to enter an age where the demographic wave of students would live their entire life in the 21st century. With back in 2015, children born in 2015 would be graduating in 2033, and they would be projected to retire from their workplace in 2080. So they might very well live their entire life in the 21st century. So as we started to think of these things, it became apparent that buildings can impact the delivery of instruction and also the student and teacher educational experience. So over the course of the last 50 years, school facilities have supported and enhanced instruction, and they've also been a roadblock and hindered instruction. So we wanted to dig into that a little bit more. We want to understand how facilities have responded to changes in instruction, and if they did, was the response quick enough? And were those responses sufficient enough to meet the instructional or curriculum need? Were these facilities a reflection of the skills that are needed for college or the workplace? Did they support that? Was flexibility important then? And is it important now? And if so, what does true flexibility look like in the classroom and in the schools in general? And we wanted to understand, how did the rapid advances in technology over the last 20 years influence instruction and facilities? So it became apparent to us that the reality is that facilities are really never neutral in how they support instruction. Facilities can either hinder instruction or they can support and enhance the instructional experience. So given all these questions, we believe we really needed to create a professional experience and an engagement vehicle where we could do a few things. We needed to gather the best and brightest teachers to hear what was happening in today's classroom and their classrooms, since they had really been recognized as instructional leaders in both Virginia and North Carolina. We wanted to discover what really needed to happen in schools in terms of facility needs. We really wanted to capture the voices and the visions of these teachers, because so often in the instructional process, our ability to engage teachers is sometimes limited. We a lot of times deal with instructional specialists and central office leadership, but we felt like it was really important to give teachers a voice in how a classroom might be configured. And we also wanted to celebrate the impact that these teachers have on their students and on their school divisions. We needed a vehicle to support the research of what is happening in the best classrooms in Virginia and North Carolina, and to also engage the best teachers in each state to find out what their ideal instructional environment might look like.
Thank you, Stephen. Ashley, along with our Teachers of the Year and Fellows today, can you describe the additional resources that you all brought to the Academy experience?
So since North Carolina was the second round of the Academy, we had an added benefit of learning that maybe there was another layer we needed to bring. And we had the great benefit of adding 3 trusted partners to join us during the 2-day event. Meeks Professional Services, they focused on the culture of learning and walked us through where education had been and where it was going on our first night together as we sat and fellowshipped. Power Up EDU brought technology to the space. So they brought items that they could be utilized in a classroom that connected technology and instruction, and really were starting to show how their technology and their products empower teachers and students with solutions that they had created. And then CEF, Scott McHugh and his team joined us and worked alongside us during the Academy. Their slogan is furniture that kids love. And I will say from the Academy experience, it's also furniture that teachers love, because it was such a great added benefit to have their furniture be utilized. It was a space that we used during the academy, and they focus a lot on makerspace technology furniture. And so that was what we were able to use. And working in that environment and providing that innovative technology and furniture at the tips of ours as the designer and then the fellows' fingertips allowed them to see how these things can work hand in hand with the built environment to strengthen the learning experience for their students.
Thank you. Now, Freebird and Natalie, how were the teachers' voices elicited? Tell us about the design of the academy process and how was this approach received by the fellows, the academy fellows?
Thanks, Bill. I'm going to start by introducing the people who were a part of it. And one of the greatest things about the academy was that it did bring together people who may have never interacted before, and it brought teachers of the year from consecutive years together in one space. I know in our cohort in that first academy that people built connections with each other, and I still have some strong connections with the people that I met that year. It started at Hotel Roanoke, which is in my neighboring town of Roanoke, Virginia, and it was back in February of 2016. And so that first academy included Tara Braninsky and Chris Averill, who are both from Chesterfield County, as well as Jacqueline Ryan, who was the 2015 Virginia State Teacher of the Year from Shenandoah County. We had Mark Martz from Smith County and Ruth Ann Cole from Bland County, and Kimberly Scott, who is from Fairfax County. Bevan Rayan from Virginia Beach and Lauren Osborne was there from Poquoson City. We had Garen Martin from Lynchburg City and Spence White, a theater teacher, joined from Bedford County. Matthew Newton came from Roanoke City, and Kelly Jones from Greensville, and Ed McCann from Appomattox County. And lastly, we had Jennifer Whirl from Gloucester County and Stacy Rice Lee from Northumberland County. And we all joined together at Hotel Roanoke for that first evening and enjoyed a lovely dinner together. And I'm going to send it over to Freebird now to introduce his cohort.
Yeah, and we had the amazing opportunity of gathering at Grandover Resort in Greensboro, North Carolina, pulling together both the 2017 and the 2018 Regional Teachers of the Year from North Carolina. It is my privilege to introduce Lisa Godwin, who is also with us tonight, from Onslow County Schools, Adam Reeder from Asheboro City Schools, Leslie Schoaf from Madison County, Lynn Ray from Clinton City, Anthony Johnson from Rowan Salisbury, Deborah Brown as the North Carolina Charter School Teacher of the Year from 2017, and then my team from Perquimans School District, Kaylee Kiffner, Lindsay Seiss from Hoke County, Julie Pittman from Rutherford County Schools, Cameron Gupton from Greene County, Courtney Samuelson, who represented the North Carolina Charter School Teacher of the Year, Kadisha Stewart of Vance County Schools, and Lisa Wall of Burke County. And one of the most important facets of this was the ability to pull so many different perspectives, not only from around the state, but also in the backgrounds of what they taught and then what they continue to do on their professional path. We have a BT coordinator, we have a math teacher, we have an Apple Distinguished Educator, a biology and physical science teacher, an associate's director of a charter school named Explorus, a social studies teacher, a curriculum coach, a national representative for No Kid Hungry and Share Our Strength, which focuses on child nutrition, and also several teachers who participated in this cohort who went on to become school level assistant principals and now principals. So it goes to show you just the diversity of the backgrounds, the diversity of the perspectives, whether that's geographically, whether that's the curriculum, or also in their own cultural representation.
So the academy took place over 2 days, and we were immersed in the world of architecture. We were also treated extremely well, and our voices were clearly valued by the Mosley firm. During that welcome dinner, we built a shared background knowledge by looking back at educational trends and their impact on the physical spaces where students learn and teachers educate. The next day, we began idea mining with prompts including the 2 most important characteristics of a fabulous learning environment must include, And the activities happening on a daily basis in an ideal learning environment include, and my personal favorite, our ideal learning environment will be most successful when it can be described as. These open-ended questions and the freedom to think without restrictions helped us discuss what is most important in schools, our students, our relationships with those students, and the dynamic spaces for them to think and learn. Over the remainder of the academy, we worked alongside architects using these puzzle-like pieces to work in groups and build our ideal school environment. The small groups presented these models to the whole group, which led to even deeper conversations about how the physical space can truly transform the educational experience for our students.
You guys are reminding me how much fun this is. Wish we could do it right now. So Lisa and Freeberg, how is the approach utilized by the Academy different from the traditional facility design processes?
I think the most important part is that teacher voices were heard for the first time. Not very often does a architectural firm sit down with teachers and get our perspective. So after that time of idea mining, we were broken into those small groups that Natalie was talking about, and we were able to think outside the box. We were able to be innovative. And there's a quote that I've heard before: the only way to discover the limits of the possible is to go beyond them into the impossible. And that's exactly what we were tasked to do. Given that voice, which was rarely something that we could do, was just an awesome opportunity. And amazingly, every group came back to the table with similar designs. We all saw schools as the hub of the community. So we wanted to make sure that the footprint of the design incorporated ways that the community could become true partners in the education of each student. So from community gardens and green spaces to open concepts that allowed students to participate in apprenticeship programs like coffee bars and technology gaming stations, were all ideas that we felt would give our students real world life experiences and make learning meaningful. We even talked about storage and lighting, room setup, and functionality of space. All of those were ideas that we felt were important to creating an environment that is conducive to that student learning. Freebird, I didn't know if there was something else you wanted to share before I moved on.
Yeah, I would also just real quickly love to talk about how the whole child was really considered in this whole process. And I think that's such an important movement right now in ed policy and decision-making processes, how to bring in the whole child perspective. And I know Lisa's going to share a little bit more about that as we discuss this further. But the greatest voice to listen to and understanding both the static aspect of space and the active part of space is to listen to a teacher and how they describe the interactions of students within that space. And we were given the opportunity to really disclose our own anecdotal insight and experience to bring that to life throughout this whole entire process.
Yeah, learning and workspaces have an effect on our overall mood and productivity. And most of us never realize the impact that space and lighting and the color of the walls, or even the arrangement of tables and chairs, impact our mood. But it's a really real thing. We all created designs that allowed for dynamic spaces that would encourage collaboration, but yet would allow for a personalized learning to take place. But above all, we discussed that we must look beyond the actual construction of the building, and we had to go deeper. So for many of our students, school is their safe place. It's where they come to be fed, both in mind, heart, soul, and spirit. It's where they come to feel accepted and loved. It's our responsibility as educators to create spaces that feel like home and give them the ability to leave past our present trauma that they might have had in their lives at the door and be free to envision and embrace a future with no limits and have that safe space to just be themselves. We all agree that helping our students feel that kind of love and hope for the future was the most important element of the design process. So that's why we kind of created a hashtag love per square foot, because we really feel like every inch of a design process of a school should be filled with love.
I also wanted to discuss another opportunity that this provided, and that's to work with CEF, Custom Educational Furniture. And as you can see in this slide, and Lisa referenced earlier, there were multiple groups that worked within their expertise and experience. So we had an elementary group, a middle, and a high group. My group happened to actually design furniture. And it was such an incredible process. One of the ways that I liken it to is this is kind of like the movie Inception, where an idea kind of comes to your head. And as you described it, there was a designer sitting right next to us who was literally drawing it out. And you could see some of those drawings here. One of my colleagues and I had the opportunity to travel to Taylorsville, North Carolina, to Custom Education Furniture, to then see those designs come to life from the paper to an actual prototype. So here you could see one of the cabinet filled tables that we designed. Another you could see as a stand-up table with the chairs magnetized up underneath. And then down below, the chameleon system, which was ultimately multiple tables and chairs that could be put together in various geometric shapes to, again, to fill that space, that static space, with the ability to move around, the ability to collaborate. Another interesting aspect of this is if you look in the right-hand side of this slide, you could see this table had a front to the table. And one of the aspects that we discussed was safety and protection for our students if anything, unfortunately, ever had to happen like a lockdown in the school. So Scott McHugh's team helped us design a functional table that could be used in educational setting that also had a safety mechanism to it. And then they worked with a company that provided a coating that went on the front that was bullet resistant. So again, just a multitude of opportunities to share our expertise and our insight, and then have the opportunity to see that really come to life at the CEF factory. Separated this opportunity from anything that my colleagues and I had the privilege and opportunity to be a part of.
I will say I was part of that furniture group, and we had a big time. Freebird, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, we did. So Ashley and Stephen, can you guys speak to the research which informed the Academy's results, particularly as it relates to the design concepts?
Yes, so really it's the physical environment that matters. And Lisa touched on it. I mean, we all realize that when we're in a space that's maybe too loud, we're not able to concentrate. This affects our students as well. When they're in a space that has poor acoustics or bad lighting, this really starts affecting how they're able to learn. And it puts more earnest back on the teacher to focus on just having them be able to concentrate beyond just the lesson. And so many of you were probably at the LearningSCAPES in Anaheim last year, where Sarah Williams Goldhagen spoke about, she talked a lot about how the environment can affect our mood, our ability to learn, even students' grades. Students have higher IQ scores in spaces with higher ceilings. Bright light stimulates creativity. Closed spaces provide space for refuge. All of those things are pieces of research that kind of build upon what we've learned in the Academy from the teachers' voices and just from general design elements that we've been continued to incorporate. We also need to anticipate the diverse population of students being taught in our buildings. They're coming from different backgrounds, cultures, economics. We want to provide a building that supports good behavior from them in there. If they're not feeling safe, that support of the building versus hindrance of the building can't be provided. We want to make sure that we support a sense of community too. If a community feels ownership in a building, then it's going to become part of the space. It's going to be part of the neighborhood. There's going to be a pride in it. In our program, we want to make sure we're pushing the envelope. Talk about what spaces can serve the community better. Talk about how even program spaces that maybe are already incorporated in a district's program can also be utilized for other things. We talked a little bit about the whole child, and Freebird has already touched on that, but how can a stereotypical nurse's station start to morph into a clinic that could be utilized by the community, even if it's just after hours, or providing a computer space that can be utilized by parents that may not have access to computers. So really thinking about a building in a more holistic approach than just addressing the program pieces as they are. In this, we want to talk about the learning culture. I think this becomes more and more obvious to us as we go. We showed a picture before, and there are many classrooms that we walk into now that are all of the desks are facing forward, and it really is a traditional classroom setting. But as we move through this line here of that continuum of the learning culture, we start seeing things go towards where we're kind of are right now, with almost in a forced environment because of the pandemic, that we are on this one-to-one digital content, but we need to look at how this student-centered and individual learning plans can be incorporated into our buildings, because someday we aren't going to all be virtual and we are going to be face-to-face, and we need to be able to make sure that we're taking elements from that we did have to be forced into, and be able to incorporate them more strongly into our built environments and into the teaching spaces that we design. So we're going to talk a little bit about a few projects that we have designed that start to incorporate some of these elements that we've learned through research and meeting with the various fellows. So this here is Buckhorn Creek Elementary School in Wake County Public Schools in North Carolina. This is actually a prototype. So there's a second school that is Barton Pond Elementary that is very similar to this. But what you see here is classroom wings that have extended learning spaces incorporated into them. So it was really about expanding out that circulation and providing space outside of the classrooms where we could have operable walls to fold back and really start extending that classroom space out. So you could have all the teachers with the walls all the way open and the students out in the space. I've been to the schools where the doors are all the walls are folded all the way back, and it's almost a pure common space where they're all working on various programs. I've been there where all the walls are closed, but students are still out there because there's such a sense of ability to see the students that even the youngest learners are able to go out there and do small project work together, whether it be on a laptop, iPad, or even if it's just working in small groups at some of the furniture that's distributed out there. And then you can also see that there's a teaching wall out there. So this allows teachers to work together on projects out in the space where they can have more students congregate around a space to learn the same lesson. So it's really about pulling that flexibility and collaborative items into the design.
One of the big takeaways from the Academy was a need for spaces where instructional work and student work could be put to a test. We needed to create spaces where actual group work, where the group work might be technology-based, could be tested in a safe, modern, and comfortable environment. This is the Media Center at Powhatan Middle School in Powhatan County, Virginia. But as part of the middle school, they had a desire to create a gaming lounge that's part of the entire Media Center library space. There's an opportunity for different types of furniture to be included in the lounge, types of furniture that could be easily configured, that could accommodate different sizes of kids. As we all know, middle school body shapes and sizes range greatly from 6th grade through 8th grade. So we need to have furniture that could provide student choice and flexibility, and also provide an area there where there are monitors and technology where the work and the programming work that actually was designed in their technology foundations program could be tested here in a classroom environment, and could also be tested and tested further after hours in a very safe and comfortable environment. So another takeaway also was the inclusion of spaces that could provide a real world experience inside of a school facility. So the last project we'll look at is Heritage High School in Lynchburg, Virginia. When we started the design of this process, we really wanted to have an open and frank conversation about what was the experience like in a modern high school library. So we wanted to really talk to them about concepts of student choice, different zones, the coffee bar, student commons, eat and drink kind of concept. And then one thing that came out throughout the design process was, as part of their life skills program in the old high school, the existing high school, their special needs life skills program actually had a roaming mobile coffee cart. That was a business that they ran, and that was part of their life skills program. So we latched on pretty early to could we incorporate a fixed food service, beverage, coffee component in as part of the library design. This really allowed us to kind of rethink the entire media center. Could it be a place where we eat and drank and socialized? In this particular case, it was a high school that was a 2-story high school. So could the space provide a visual connection for both floors? Allowed us to explore the types of materials in the furniture, and really to explore on a smaller scale, could this space become more like a community college or small college student center, student commons? And really the focus of it in terms of the front kind of half of this of this particular space was the ability to incorporate a functioning life skills program, a component that's being taught within the school, in an area where those students could feel included and be exposed to the entire high school population, which was very important.
All right, great job, everybody. This is our final topic, I guess, and it's going to be kind of a group discussion, a little more free form. So everybody feel free to chime in as you feel so inclined. So here we go. Based on the Academy's success, what advice can you give to others as they begin their school facility design processes? And if nobody's going to jump, I am just going to call on people.
No.
All right, there we go. All right, Natalie.
So I was super grateful to not only be invited to the table for this institute, but to really have my words matter. When I got back to my classroom this past August, after literally leaving it in a moment's notice in March, I could not even begin to think about planning instruction until I had set up my physical space. My mind was not available to think about planning my academic activities until I had created a space that brought me and hopefully my students joy. Teachers live in school buildings. I spend more time there than I do in my own house. We are literally there all the time. We know every nook and cranny. We know what spaces work, how spaces can flow with students, and we know what spaces to avoid. We know that if a space is not, doesn't have a purposeful function, it is really hindering the educational capabilities of the building. So my advice to other people beginning in facility design is to really include teachers in the conversation, as Mosley has done, because we are living in that final product. So a space that brings its teachers joy will inherently help them to be the best educators that they can possibly be, and therefore have a positive impact on our students. So including teachers will ultimately help create a space where teachers and students want to be, where they want to learn and want to grow as both educators and as students on their learning journey. So include the teachers.
Good advice. Thank you.
And I want to piggyback on that comment, because I feel like this was one of the most remarkable experiences during the Teacher of the Year journey for both Lisa and I. And I know we've talked about this. And one of the main reasons is because, you know, oftentimes in our profession, there's a sense that professionalism is lacking, and those opportunities to, as you know, as the Hamilton quotes, you know, to be in the room where it happens. And this was an experience where we were in the room where it happens. We were with the designers. we were with the architects, and there was a collegiality that had existed that I haven't really had that experience before. And it opened our eyes, and I really feel like it also shed some light to our colleagues with Mosley and the other groups that we work with, that when you seek advice from the stakeholders, and when you include the stakeholders' voice, that some unbelievable transformational experiences occur. And I had the opportunity to actually witness this at an even greater level in my own community as Mosley was working with Southern Alamance. And so they took this same concept and created a Southern Alamance community town hall, and again, sought the voices and the insight and the experience and the wisdom of the stakeholders. In this case, it was the parents, the teachers, the students, and the community members. So if there's one piece of advice, it's when you include your stakeholders in this, a true transformation can occur in this process. And I'm greatly appreciative for the personal opportunity, but also the collective and collaborative experience of my colleagues.
Good
So
stuff.
I want to go in a different direction and say that I would like to encourage districts, their planning team, whether it be the school board, the superintendent, the teachers that come together around the table. I want to encourage them to also think outside the box and open their wallets because yes, innovation is going to be a little more cost prohibitive than a normal, like traditional boxed school system or school building. But if you make the investment and you really put in the elements into the architectural design that is going to incorporate apprenticeships and give those students those real world hands-on activities, and you involve the community and you truly make the school the hub of that community, you are going to receive so much more back from that investment. I mean, we're growing the future leaders of tomorrow. It's worth the investment. And I just want to encourage them to not be, scared of putting in the money to make magic happen for children, because it truly is worth it. And I'm so proud of the districts that have already, made that leap, those that you shared with us during this presentation. I'm so proud of them, and I look forward to watching them and see how their children grow, because I know that they are going to have great dividends from the investments that they made.
Very good. Thank you, Lisa. Stephen, Ashley, any final thoughts?
Well, I would build a little bit on what Lisa said. Whether you're a teacher or an educator or a facilities person or an architect or designer participating in this webinar, I would encourage you to kind of push the boundaries of what educational spaces are. As Lisa mentioned, she applauded the work that the three projects that we showcased briefly in this presentation. And kind of surprisingly, at least in my particular world, it's a lot easier for the smaller school divisions to be a little more nimble in how they implement new instructional space, flexible, collaborative instructional spaces. And sometimes it's more difficult for a larger school division to implement that because they're pressing concerns of equity and parity. So I would just continue. Anybody involved in what we do collectively, whether you're a teacher, an architect, a designer, whatnot, regardless of the school division size that you are participating in or collaborating in, continue to push the envelope and to try and really have your voice heard and create the ability to really create space where students can be inspired and teachers can be motivated, and really you can see the benefits of those spaces in action.
Thank you, Stephen.
And lastly, I would just like to touch on one thing that we've talked about much with the fellows. It's not so much what the Academy was focused on, but I think it's what we've taken away on top of that is make sure that you're including the teachers, but also make sure you're including the students. There's a big voice there that so often, it's not so much that we as designers don't want that voice. We so often just don't ask the facility groups to bring that voice to the table. Much like why teachers are often not brought to the table. It's just, it's not in the protocol. We want to make sure the facility groups are involved. We want to make sure that the superintendent is involved, but make sure you're asking if they can be there. And when you're bringing the students to the table, much like what we're finding in our research, is that make sure it's a diverse group. It's not just the valedictorian. It's not just the students that this won't embarrass the superintendent if they go meet with the architect. Make sure that you get a great cross section of that school so that you understand all the different learning environments that are needed by those students. And that way you can incorporate those into the space. And like Lisa said, we can excitingly look to see how those students will flourish in years to come.
Very good. Great closing comments, guys. So thank you all for sharing this inspiring program and this process with us today. On this last slide, I believe there's links here that you can access to get more material about the Academy and white papers. If you're not able to find them here, just go to our website. It's mosleyarchitects.com. And there's 2 E's in Mosley, MOSELEY, and you'll find it there in our news feed. So on behalf of all of our team members at Mosley Architects and our panel of teacher leaders today, I just want to thank everyone for participating in today's webinar, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your conference. Thank you very much.